So the risk reduction threshold, Joe?
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we had these questions answered. This will come up later, but this is basically what we're reinforcing with our firefighters. The protection corridor has been established. We have a CCP in place. The RTF assembly is in place with protection element, and the RTF moves to the building. And what we're going to see now is this in a video because of the fact that, once again, we're visual learners and this just sort of made sense. So the video is going to roll, and you're going to see the makeup of this incident as it transpires. Now, the contact team, I believe, is already in the building, correct?
Yes. So this is the protection corridor being set up. Again, we're moving a little bit closer to the building, trying to get a better handle on what's moving around the building, and just to give the security measures in place. As we start to move injured and RTF through that corridor, we want to give them security measures on either side of that corridor.
So once again, weapons are drawn, weapons are up, focused on the building. What's happening now is fire department's arriving on scene. They've positioned away from the incident. Concealment cover is in place. We are not in line of sight of the shooter. The firefighters come out, they are going to don their equipment. Now this equipment's going to look different depending on municipality. Right now what we're trying to work on is either type 3 or type 4 ballistics plates in a plate carrier because it's more of a universal fit and because of the fact that the plates have a tendency of lasting a very long time. In addition to that, they're going to have an IFAC on their chest and they're going to start assembling that on their person.
So what you're going to see here is, like I said before, the strike team moving in, the police only, and they're identifying their casualty collection point, and they're setting up their two turns or two corner rule. They're setting up to use that room directly behind that officer that officer's coming out of. That's going to be the casualty collection point, and they're now getting to locations where they have their two turns. So they will stay in place and be static protection to protect that casualty collection point. At this point, they're going to radio out. We're set up. We're ready to accept RTF. And we're going to introduce RTF.
So at this point, the fire department is assembling. We have our transport mechanism from the staging area to the building in question. We're anticipating that staging is going to be a considerable distance away. If we have firefighters walking to that area, that's going to be problematic, especially if we have victim recovery. So we have arranged for transport. This is our SWAT van. So our police are offered no additional protection upon their approach either. So the idea behind this is we're just getting them to the scene with the appropriate amount of ballistic protection and the appropriate protection element, that being law enforcement.
You're going to see that RTF moving with two protection elements in front and one in back, basically bookending those firefighters and moving up to the building and making entry into the CCP.
Now, one of the questions that came up had to do with ballistic protection. And when you look at that plate, that 10 by 12 plate that's on the front, it doesn't look like much. And it really isn't that much.
It's more in front of you, though.
Well, in front of me, it's more like this, right? So the idea is it's not going to cover a whole lot. But our police officers really are not protected with much more than that either. The thing that we have working in our benefit is in front of us, there is an officer, at least one, with an additional plate carrier ballistic vest. So as bad as this sounds, and as much as we don't want to think of our police officers as human shields, they really are an additional level of protection for firefighters. And in back of them, now if we were advancing with two people, it's going to look different, and you're going to see that. But the police officers are in front, the firefighters are down, going to keep their head down. Movement is going to be quick and it's going to be deliberate. But we're going to be moving as a unit. We're going to hold on to each other, and we're going to get in that building a lot faster. So as far as the rescue task force entry, what you're going to see next is what happens after they cross that threshold, the interior door. So let's go ahead and roll this video. This video's got our CCP established. Firefighters come in. They're going to drop a medical kit. That's what we call our drop bag. It's going to have additional TECC supplies. We'll explain what we carry a little bit later. The TECC supplies are going to be in place so that when somebody else comes to establish that CCP, it's going to be available to them. So they walk into the area of conflict. This is the point of injury. They're going to provide point of injury care if they can. If there's active fire going on, they're not going to spend a lot of time in this room. If they even make it to the victim, they're just going to grab the victim and go. But in this situation, we have a controlled area. We have protection elements in place. Police officers covering on the 12 and on the 6, so the front and the rear are covered. A tourniquet is being put in place on the arm of one victim, who is also very hefty, and then we got an emergency bandage being placed on the leg of the second. So at this point, this RTF is going to prioritize care. If we need to move victims, we're going to probably move the most critically injured first, and then come back for the next. If we have additional RTF, we're going to bring them in as well to start moving victims. It all depends on how many victims you have. All right, and what he's doing right now is he's radioing to the medical group supervisor. Medical group supervisor is going to be in charge of typical triage, treatment, transport. How many victims do we have on the inside? Who are we treating? How critical are they? And what kind of arrangements need to be made for traditional transport?
So you see, our theme of staying in your lane of expertise and working together is a concept that runs throughout.
So additional RTF advancement. Now, different departments have different methodologies with this. Some call them evac teams, some call them CCP. We have chosen at this point to name all of our medical forces Rescue Task Force, because we don't want to necessarily pigeonhole them into any specific task. Once they get in there, they might find that they have to remove the victim and they might not want to wait for evac. So they'll grab that patient, they'll treat them initially and get them out. But they might find that it's more appropriate to treat, and then move later, and maybe a second RTF is appropriate for that. But everybody's going to be called RTF, Rescue Task Force 1, Rescue Task Force 2. It's not a foreign concept to us. Some places use Attack 1, Attack 2. Some use 1st Division, 2nd Division, depending on location or geographic location inside the building. We have a tendency of being able to rename our entities based on need and based on assignment. And that's one of those things that we've done here.
You're going to see on this video, you're going to see the Rescue Task Force being introduced on foot with 2 officers, 2 fire personnel, and of course the threat is to the front of them, so both officers are addressing the threat of the front. Let's roll it and watch this second Rescue Task Force be introduced.
So we still have the 2 officers, and one thing that we're not protecting is the rear, because that's not our greatest threat. There's still a threat associated with the exterior of the building. There's no doubt, head on a swivel, right? But our greatest threat is where we know we heard gunshots, or where we know we have victims, and that's to the front. So once again, fire department staying low behind police department or law enforcement. They'll make it to the door, and then they will eventually make entry. They have another drop bag. Now, generally speaking, on our ambulances, we carry 2 ballistic vests. At least this is the idea. We would like to have this funded shortly. 2 ballistic vests, a drop bag, and 2 helmets. BSI, or body substance isolation, and goggles, that too will be in place, but it's stuff that they carry with them already. So the second thing that we wanted to show is what happened after they crossed the threshold. They're going to come in and they're going to staff that CCP. Inside that CCP, we're looking at patient reevaluation. We're taking a look at patient care, what our sort looks like, whether we have to move patients quickly or not so quickly, and just get a better idea as to the general outcome of removing patients. So as we roll this video, you're going to see the second RTF coming in. They're going to pick up that drop bag as they cross the CCP. Law enforcement's going with them because that law enforcement officer is going to be available to them if they need to move. They start their assessment on those that have been placed in the CCP already,